Grand Rising, everyone. Grand Rising. Hope everyone's having a great Friday Rising. Everyone's doing extremely well. Want to say Grand Rising to the panel. Grand Rising, Lady Free. LJ Free.
Grand Rising, everyone.
Peace to the chat, Grand Rising.
Go ahead and give us some ones. Make sure y'all can hear us. I just noticed I changed everything but the day of the week, so I gotta go back and change that for the title. I still have it listed as Thursday, so I'll correct that. Thank you, y'all.
Ain't go back in time now. Only moving forward.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna get it right. I'm gonna get it right.
Get it right. Tighten up.
I want to say Grand Rising to everyone that's in the chat. Enrique, Lady Jake, Oak Cliff Tiff came in like 1.5, and 1.3 almost at the same time.
How do I know No Sellout was gonna do the Yang Yang parody when y'all said that?
What parody? Oh, I can't.
Like, get it right.
Oh.
How you gonna do the rest?
Grand Rising Macadam 1. Grand Rising El Boria. Y'all starting early already. Grand Rising Pamela Hall. No Sellout. Grand Rising David Corey. Grand Rising Mr. TJ. Grand Rising to everyone that's in the audience that chooses not to participate in the chat for whatever reason. We still want to acknowledge you because we know you can hear us. Grand Rising to the new subscribers. Grand Rising to everyone that can hear our voice on other platforms. So, for those of you who need new hard hats, you can see David Corey, Mr. TJ, and anybody else with a ratchet to get your new hard hats.
You gonna get that man a ratchet? All right, I'm done.
The other channels call them wrenches. We're going to call them ratchets. Thanks to Mr. TJ. So.
Thanks, Mr. TJ. Thanks a lot, sir.
You be handing out them ratchets.
I've been tickled by that since yesterday.
Man, listen, I've been hearing about it since yesterday.
What, y'all got a problem with them ratchets?
So, thank you, Mr. TJ. Appreciate you, brother. You just started something here on a conscious assembly. So
that was classic. Yeah.
That's the last ratchet statement after the show.
Yeah. So if you got a ratchet, you are responsible for dispensing our hard hats, collecting hard hats, and making sure everybody clear the blast area. Grand Rising, Manny M. Frenchia. Hold on, Frenchia. Sorry, my apologies. Grand Rising, glad you was able to catch the cab this rising.
You messed me up for like 4 seconds with that.
Who?
You said Manny M. I said Manny Pacquiao?
No, man. Let's see. I told y'all I can't read and talk at the same time. Y'all don't be listening to me. Grand Rising Copper Chopper. Oh, no, sell out almost some ratchet. TH? Yes, ratchet. We have ratchets.
Don't sell out. We be hanging out a ratchet? I can't help it. I'm sorry.
See, Mr. TJ, see what you did? Just caused so much pain and anguish in my life. It's okay, though. We're going to get it right.
It's Friday.
So, where do we go from here? Deeper. That's where we go. It's about to get even deeper. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Indians, autochthonous people, indigenous people, and any other French word we could think of that's supposed to represent us.
Oh, it still hurts. Mm.
Yeah. That's okay, though. We're going to get it right. We're going to make it right. Then we're going to make it do what it do.
Real talk.
Exactly. So, I'm going to go ahead and do this public service announcement so we can go ahead and get it in. Then we're going to Grand Rising, Golden Moon. Let's see. This episode of Cab Grand Rising Show, calling all bloodlines or calling Aboriginal bloodlines, is brought to you by the Tactonist Assembly, where the real work gets done, because the Tactonist Assembly is a gathering of the minds that do the work. So who are we? We are in a non-profit organization dedicated to raising up indigenous American voices by using genealogy, also known as family history, which is the study of families and the tracing of their lineage and history. Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, genetic analysis, and other records to obtain information about a family and to demonstrate kinship and pedigree of its members. Our core values are the foundation of our company, and it's essential to our success and serve as a lens through which we evaluate every business decision. And those core values are, but are not limited to, integrity, which is knowing and doing what is right; respect, treating others the way that you want to be treated; responsibility is embracing opportunities to contribute; servant leadership is serving the common good. And for those of you who are just tuning in and don't know what we're about, our main mission is to help you tie into your family tree, help you find out who you are, what tribe you belong to, regardless of the tribe, and if you so choose, help you tie into that tribe. Our other goal and mission is to help you become financially independent, financially successful, and if you so choose to take that information that we offer at our disposal, free of charge, to further your relatives, your community, and also your tribe, we'll also help you in that. We are not saying that you must join a tribe to be successful or to be independent, financially independent. We're saying that knowing your tribe and finding your tribe is the best way to know who you are, so you can actually get what's rightfully yours. So with that, I turn to the panel to see if there was anything I missed or if there's anything else that needs to be covered.
Sounds golden.
Cool. Make sure we are on point and on track. And it's time to get on with the get on. So we left off yesterday with the realization that there was a new influx of black Slavs, aka black slaves. And now there's black codes to usher these black Slavs and black slaves into the new slavery system, aka the penal system, aka federal and state prisons. Because the Emancipation Proclamation freed the Slavs so they could run north and join the Union Army to fight the Southern Confederate Army. When the Confederate was defeated on paper, and I do say and repeat on paper, then the 13th Amendment was ratified in the United States Constitution. And basically, that changed the system of slavery. and moved the system of slavery from the plantations to federal and state prisons to preserve the South economically. So what did that mean, and what does that mean at this particular time in the late 1800s for the American Indian, aka the Black Indian, aka our ancestors? It means a couple of things at this particular point. It means a majority of our ancestors have decided to move out west with the Trail of Tears to either one, join one of those plantations, or two, start their own Negro Wall Street, as it's called. So you had plantation Indians and you had non-plantation Indians out west. This is after the Indian Removal Act. Then over on the East Coast, you have non-plantation Indians who are struggling, and you still have plantation Indians. They're just trying to move them out west because they want access to this gold in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia. And you also have the new Black Irish and Black Dutch, which were nothing more than your Indians from all tribes that declared that they were Black Dutch and Black Irish to keep themselves from being either moved to the west on a reservation or having their land taken from them. So
And why were they able to do this? Because you had melanated Irish and Dutch and Germans.
Exactly. And remember, those melanated Irish and Dutch and Germans, some of them were Huguenots, some of them were followers of the Catholic faith. Some came by way of, Europe, Holland. Some came by way of East Africa. And the reason why our ancestors wanted to choose that route is because there was land being set aside for Europeans. But the caveat, or the catch if it were, was that once you declared yourself a Black Indian or a Black Irish, grabbed your Bible, and had on your wooden bottom shoes, you are voluntarily changing your status from Indian to Slav. I'm going to repeat that again. You're breaking up, Bones.
I'm saying Black Slav at that.
Right. So I'm going to repeat that. When our ancestors decide to protect their land by by buying it as a Black Dutch or Black Irish, and say they're Black Dutch or Black Irish, pick up their Bibles and have their wood bottom shoes on, they gave up their right to be Indian, thus giving up their right to be on tax-free land and on the reservation. So now they are officially citizens according to the United States Constitution. So therefore they're treated no different than the Slavs and other immigrants that came over here. So this is where we're at this particular point in history, in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And so now what you're going to start to see, and what we're going to expose, is the finalization of the switch, of the trade, if you will. How we officially became Black and Negroes and African Americans, because we voluntarily chose to become Black Irish and Black Dutch. So anything anybody want to add before we get to getting?
For people to remember, if we was able to claim these classes And what is that telling you? The stories of these melanated Irish and German and French are true. They were here. Indians were able to blend in. They looked just alike. It was a blend in. You couldn't tell them apart.
So yeah, we got to keep that in mind because it can get confusing. You have to know who is who and who's claiming to be who.
And also keep some of these trigger words in mind as well. Because oftentimes when we hear Confederacy, we get a certain picture or image in our mind intentionally. And we often forget that a lot of our ancestral Indian tribes formed confederacies. And a lot of the symbolism from the South, whether it be like the flag or whatnot, that has indigenous ties and heritage. So keep that in mind when you hear a lot of these trigger words and just try to keep everything straight and see clearly.
Thank you, Freak. So the link for the first conversation of discussion is the Knights of Labor. And I'll put it in the chat. So I'm going to set this up for you so we can understand what's going on now. And you'll understand the title. Grand Rising of Darian Woods came in just in time. We're about to talk about how the Union swapped places with the Confederation. I don't mean the theater civil war. We're talking about the actual civil war that took place. Right? So you have these Slavs coming in and they're needing work. But the people with the skill sets are our people. Why? Because this is our land and we've been here for the longest and we have skill sets that they don't. We're used to working in these environments and they're not. So we have intellectual and physical advantage. And also territorial advantage. So when you start seeing these unions pop up that are keeping our brothers and sisters from being gainfully employed. So let's look at this for a second. You have these, what they call unions, right? Which is supposed to be representations of workers to help them have what you call equal rights in the workforce, right? And it started up north. As you'll see, Ohio and Pennsylvania were the first two places where they had unions. And then you have the quote-unquote blacks, which are a mixture or a combination of your official Black Irish and Black Dutch that came from Europe and Africa, and your new Black Irish and Black Dutch, which are the Indians that are proclaiming or pretending to be Black Dutch so they can keep their land. So we know that Black Dutch equals Black Slav, which equals Black Slave, which equals Slave, which equals Black, which equals Negro. Okay? Hopefully y'all got that. So you have the Union versus the Confederation. Because remember, the Confederation is nothing more than Indians coming together to fight for a common cause. So what's happening with these blacks, aka Indians, that are now fighting for a common cause? They're going up against these unions. Now remember, you have the black codes, you have these Jim Crow laws that are specifically instituted to put our brothers and sisters in jail for slavery. Because now you have these new institutions and they need workers. So they need to commit frivolous crimes so they can have these workers to get this free labor so they can get back on their feet financially. Well, if you have people that are gainfully employed and working, that's not going to work. And if they're skilled enough to do the work, then how can you arrest them if all they're doing is going to work and then coming home? So here come the unions. To take these jobs away. So I'm going to read about the Knights of Labor. I put the link in the chat. And panel, Anytime y'all want to chime in, please do so. All right, here we go.
Them hard hats, tighten them hard hats.
Oh yeah, gotta bring in the warning. Gotta bring in the warning. I almost forgot. Y'all gotta remind me.
TMH,
Yes.
don't forget the warning.
Thanks, Free. Appreciate you.
No problem. My pleasure.
Smart behind.
Warning, warning, warning. Hard hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots required.
Y'all heard that? If you don't know where to go, find somebody with a ratchet. They'll put you in the right place. Somebody laughing. Somebody's
Yeah, that's gonna take some getting used to.
Yeah, look at one. Ass at all. Hey man, I like now.
That's really gonna take some getting used to.
Hey man, we gotta have evacuation procedures, right? Just in case the rebels start falling. Just find somebody with a ratchet. All right. So, Knights.
Duly noted.
You got it right.
Hush balls. So here we go. Knights of Labor. The Knights of Labor, K of L, officially Noble and Holy Order of the Knights of Labor, was an American labor federation active in the late 19th century, especially in the 1880s. It operated as well in Canada and had chapters also in Great Britain and Australia. Now that's interesting. Its most important leaders were Terence V, Powderly, and stepbrother Joseph Bath. The Knights promoted the social and cultural uplifting of the working man, rejected socialism and anarchism, demanded the 8-hour day, and promoted the producer's ethic of republicanism in the United States. In some cases, it acted as a labor union, negotiated with employers, but it was never well organized or funded. After a rapid expansion in the mid-1880s, it suddenly lost its new members and became a small operation again. It was founded by Uriah Smith Stephens on December 28, 1869. I'm going to say that again. It was founded by Uriah Smith Stephens on December 28, 1869. Now, this is not too long after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and the 18th Amendment was ratified. Coincidence? You think?
Not.
Okay. It reached 28,000 members in 1880, then jumped to 100,000 in 1884.
I wonder what was happening.
There was an influx of European Slavs. Okay. By 1886, 20% of all workers were affiliated, nearly 800,000 members. Its frail organizational structure could not cope as it was battered by charges of failure and violence and calumnies of the association with the Haymarket Square riot. Most members abandoned the movement in 1886 to 1887, leaving at most 100,000 in 1890. Now, here's a question we have to understand. They were not sending us their best people. Let's be honest. According to what is stated and what we've read and what's been exposed to us, they were sending us their prisoners, their prostitutes, and their mentally unstable. Those are not my words. I didn't pick these terms, and I didn't send these people. So that's why you're having these riots and this fighting, because they were sending people who weren't morally upstanding by their codes. So there's no wonder there's fighting. There's no wonder there's riots. Where is it? Hold on. So we're dealing with criminals that are forming or trying to form a union against our ancestors, to keep our ancestors from working, so our ancestors will be loitering and doing things that will violate the black codes, and Jim Crow laws that would do what? Put them in jail. Most members abandoned the movement in 1886 to 1887, leaving at most 100,000 in 1890. Many opted to join groups that helped to identify their specific needs instead of the KOL, which addressed many different types of issues. The Panic of 1893 terminated the Knights of Labor's importance. Remnants of the Knights of Labor continued to exist until 1949, when the group's last 50-member local dropped its affiliation. So let's talk about the founder, Uriah Smith Stevens. Before I talk about the origins, let's see who Uriah Smith Stevens is. Any hints that he might be a Huguenot?
Good chance.
I bet on it.
So
Let's see.
So it reads that he was born August 3rd, 1821, and transitioned February 13th, 1882. He was an American labor leader. He was most notable for his leadership of 9 Philadelphia garment workers in founding the Knights of Labor in 1869, a successful early American labor union. Born in New Jersey and initially educated for the ministry, Stevens was an apprentice as a tailor when he was a teenager so that he could help support his family. He settled in Philadelphia where he continued to work at his trade. After extensive travel throughout the western United States, Mexico, and Europe in the late 1840s and early 1850s, he returned to Philadelphia where he worked as a tailor and became active in fraternal organizations and the labor movement. Stop. Did y'all catch that? I'm going to rewind it. It said he returned to Philadelphia where he worked as a tailor and became active in fraternal organizations and the labor movement. I wonder what fraternal organizations that he belonged to.
Well.
Sounds like he's trying to move up the ranks of the feudal society.
We've seen this pattern before.
Ladarian Wood says, Knights of Labor sounds like one of them janky temp service policies. Or them janky temp service places.
It does. He has a valid point.
So it goes on to read that after an initial effort, the Garment Cutters Union failed to take root. In 1869, Stevens founded the Knights of Labor. He originally conceived of the organization as a fraternal one that included secret rituals and focus on individual, personal, and professional development. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't this sound like the counterpart to the King's Daughters?
Yes, it do.
I can see why you would say that.
As the organizations expanded, debates over the need for secrecy and rituals eventually ended when Stevens resigned and the organization voted to eliminate these requirements, which enabled it to then begin recruiting as members workers and tradesmen who were Catholic. So these were the Catholic French or the Catholic Slavs. Remember, majority of your Catholics up north.
Yep, they split in half between Catholics and Huguenots,
which are
Protestants,
thank you.
Puritans.
But a lot of them were friendly behind scenes. That's what people need to also keep in mind. That's why a lot of these secret societies were even set up so that they could communicate without having the auspice of the church, like harass them, basically.
Yeah, because also remember, a lot of these French claimed to be Catholics to get away from persecution, but privately they were Protestants.
Exactly. So then it goes on to read that Stevens remained active in the labor movement after leaving the Knights of Labor and died in Philadelphia in 1882. The Knights of Labor continued to expand until backlash against unions following the Haymarket Affair and the Panic of 1893, and it caused workers to depart the K of L, and its membership declined until the organization became defunct in 1949. Stephen's primary legacy was as the founder and organizer of one of the first successful nationwide labor unions. So we have organizations of labor unions because they are feeling disenfranchised, right? Safe to say, right?
Correct. They want representation.
Exactly. So, but not only are these unions put together as means to help them gain employment, but they're also put together to have secret orders and secret societies in place to keep their people together. I guess that's the best way to put it. So now we're looking at unions in the late 1800s. So how do these unions affect our Indians who have now become, or chosen to become, let me correct that. How does this affect our Indian relatives who have chosen to become Black Dutch and Black Irish? It affects them because of employment. It affects them because of taxation. Because remember, they're now sharecropping, right? And so now family members are looking to get work. Well, if you don't have a job, then you can't pay those taxes to help your family down south, right? So what happens to you? You go to jail. You go to slavery. Let me pull up another link. That link didn't work. Do this one. All right. So there's this link that was sent to me by Copper Indio. I know some was sent to by Copper and some were put in the chat by Bones. So Bones, if you put this one in, just let me know. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the chat. This is from the National Archives, and it's called "Movement in Ohio to Deport the Negro." So now y'all gonna start to see the ramifications of our ancestors declaring Black Dutch and Black Irish so they could keep their land and stay on the East Coast or the Southeast. Go ahead and Alright. The movement in Ohio to deport the Negro. It reads, now check this out now. Who are the Negroes at this particular time? The Negroes are our Indian brothers and sisters, our Indian ancestors, who have voluntarily declared themselves to be Black Dutch and Black Irish. And by declaring yourself to be Black Dutch and Black Irish, you are now a citizen of the United States and have to follow the same laws as the Irish and the European who immigrated over here. Please remember that. So the Indians didn't disappear. They either went on reservations out west, stayed on the reservations here, built their own towns and their cities as Indians, okay? Or they decided to become blacks, Indians and Irish, which end up being blacks, Slavs, which end up being your Negroes. Because if you go back and look at what Negro was, it's a derivative of Negroid features in Europe. European Negroid features dealing with people of Europe. So remember, there were actually real black Dutch and real black Irish people that were here as well. Can't emphasize that enough. So, origin and scope. The Negro problem in some form has been constantly before the American people. Perhaps no other question has so often or so profoundly agitated the public mind. It exacted attention in colonial times and has reckoned one of these causes of the American Revolutions. It was debated in the Federal Convention. It has been discussed on the floor of Congress. Political campaigns have been fought on this issue alone, and politicians have risen and fallen according as they took their stand for or against the Negro. The editor, the preacher, and the novelist have been drawn into the controversy, for it has penetrated every element in our society and every state in the Union. Making it bigger. Alright. Then it goes on to read. Since its appearance in the Ordinance of 1787, the question of the Negro has held conspicuous place in Ohio annals. Here, as elsewhere, opinion has been divided, and no solution of the question has won an unanimous following. There have always been two parties, each seeking to undo the work of the other. In the Constitutional Convention of 1802, the pro-slavery and anti-slavery parties formally appeared, and the debates on this topic aroused such warmth of feeling that the success of the convention was in danger. Now you got to remember, between 1787 and 1802, our ancestors were not Negroes. They were Indians. So who are these Negroes that they're talking about? Could it be these dark-haired, dark-eyed Slavs, along with the black Irish and the black Dutch, who were more melanated? It's possible, right? It says, and anti-slavery parties formally appeared, and the debates on this topic aroused such warmth of feeling that the success of the convention was endangered. Each side won a partial victory. The anti-slavery party secured the prohibition of slavery, and the pro-slavery party secured the white man's constitution. Stop. Whose constitution is this? Really, hammer time. Whose constitution is this?
Oh, yeah.
It's called the white man's constitution. Now, you got to remember, who are they considering white at this particular point in time? This is not just against the Negro as we know the Negro to be today, or have known the Negro to be.
Right. These are overlaid stories.
Landowners.
So we got to remember that. You got to take everything that we're reading and pay close attention, because, again, like Free says, overlaid stories. Lectio difficilio.
Or better yet said in their terms, a tale of two cities.
So,
or people.
So then it talks about prohibition of slavery was thus fixed for Ohio, but the question is, what was to be done with the freed Negro was left open. Under the Constitution of 1802, the free Negro could neither vote nor hold office. Well, we know they weren't talking about our ancestors, because our ancestors did both. As a matter of fact, at this particular time, they held office in Congress. He could take no part in public affairs, and yet was considered a fit subject for legislation. The General Assembly in 1804 and again in 1807 enacted laws designated to restrict the immigration of freedmen into Ohio and to safeguard the public against the possibility of free blacks becoming Hold on, I have to turn the page and rule the book down. And a free black becoming charged. Subsequent legislation strengthened these laws despite the efforts of the opposition who, with the blacks, sent petition after petition to the legislature requesting the repeal of all laws against the colored people. Now, let's look at this. Geographically speaking, because I'm directionally impaired, so help me out. Is Ohio considered a northern territory or a southern territory?
It's a northern territory. It actually sits right at it's supposed to be the gateway to the north. Once you cross the Ohio River, that's what they say, now you're in the north.
So it's the gateway to the north. That's very interesting you said that, Free, because it looks like they're trying to close the gate on blacks so they don't make it north. So
doesn't surprise me.
So
the energy's kind of still the same in that area.
Exactly. So to put this in its proper context,
Question.
Go ahead, Bones.
Don't the World Fair take place not too long from this time period in Chicago, just downriver?
I believe you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And they clearing out Negroes from Ohio from a whole new. Let me stop.
Taught a lot of agriculture during those fairs. They were trying to teach people how to survive on our land, how to thrive, I should say. Well, survive and thrive. But that's really what those world fairs were. If you guys really start looking into those, it's going to reveal a lot in terms of the shuffle game when it comes to different peoples from different populations in different countries. It'll show you a lot.
So this book
they have passports at the fair. Come on now.
Yeah. Thorough passports. Their passports are more thorough than ours. Like, I looked at my passport and I looked at theirs. Their passport make my passport look like a kitty ID card.
Which makes sense because they may have done population shuffles prior to this, but this is a major one. And a lot of the population shuffles were being hidden by these theater style world wars.
And also too, if you think about this, the 13th Amendment has already put in place, which is being enforced where? The South. To where in order for the South to thrive, they need free labor. They need to continue with their slavery or their Slavs. And they're importing Slavs, but these Slavs are not going south. These Slavs are going north. Go back and do your research and you'll find after the Emancipation Proclamation and after the 13th Amendment was ratified, there was a massive influx of Europeans coming to the north and not the south. And there was a massive movement to make room for them. So where are they pushing these free blacks? They're pushing them south. Why are they pushing them south? So they would be subject to these laws, so they would end up in jail for free labor.
Swapping the workforce.
Because the whole purpose and the whole goal was to make sure that the industrial work went to these Europeans and the manual work went to the new Slavs, the new Black Irish, the new Black Dutch, our ancestors who were once American Indian.
And look at all the latitude you even get within that scenario. Because say you have someone who's in the South and they're prospering, they're doing well, they're able to keep up with these new imposed taxes and whatnot, they're fine. And then you have this influx of Black Dutch. So it's harder to tell who is who. And now you also have these black codes. It's so easy to make up something to now throw this landowner who's been minding his business in jail. A case of mistaken identity, perhaps. gets thrown in jail long enough to where he can't work, he can't make his payments, he loses his land, and they just let him out like, oh, sorry, our bad. And now he's put in a position to where he's vagrant, and his family could end up indigent based off of that. And that's not a far stretch. That's a scenario, yes. But when you look at a lot of these dealings that have happened in the South, it was a lot of conniving going on. So a lot of this mixture to confuse who is who, whether you're free or Slav, I mean, you can see the agenda behind it. That's one of many.
Very well put.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff Tiff says, big Amish population in Ohio.
Truth.
Joe 47 says it's still going on today. Of course it's still going on today. The problem now is that the individuals that are the immigrants that don't nobody want over here because they're taking jobs are now the quote-unquote Mexicans or Latinos who are some of our relatives. Let's not forget that.
Question.
What's that?
Who mad they're coming over here?
The Slavs.
The ones that's still in the same place they was since back then.
They're poor class.
Mm-hmm.
So now y'all understand what the premise is and why there's such a massive amount of us down south. They're forcing us down south.
And this is also a lot of, tribal indigenous land. Like a lot of people didn't move too far from their area if they could help it. So of course that also has a lot to do with why our population is so strong in the South as well.
Exactly. So let's continue to read. It says, legislation, however, did not prevent a noticeable, even an alarming increase in the Negro population. For every Negro in 1800, there were 6 in 1810. And in 1820, the Negro population was 4,723, of whom a large percentage came from the border slave states in Virginia and Kentucky. Immigrants came not only of their own accord, but in some instances, whole colonies were freed to settle in Ohio. Stop. I'm gonna read that part again. I want to see if y'all can pick this part up. It goes on to say, for every Negro in the 1800s, there were 6 in 1810. So how do we still remain the 17% of the population? But I'm gonna leave that alone. And in 1820, the Negro population was 4,723. That was in 1820. What had not happened yet? Remember, we have to keep the timelines at the forefront of our mind when we're reading these books.
What's that number in a year again?
1820 and 4,723.
There's a problem.
No, it's not.
How is this less Negroes in 1870 than what it is that you said you bought on slave ships? We got a problem.
Oh, well.
Mathematics is fundamental here. If you're saying only 407,000 Negroes, and what you said again, 18 what?
1820.
So what happened to all these so-called extra thousand that you bought here?
Fuzzy.
Where they go? Where they go? You want us to believe in 1600s that you bought millions of us here. But in 1800s, there's only 407,000?
But
Houston, we got a problem.
Well, again, Grand Rising, Big Hawk. Well, we have to, again, look at the timelines and look at what the terminology that they're using. At this time, they're still enslaving Slavs, and they're still enslaving Black Dutch. You got to realize these Negroes that they're talking about, they're not our relatives. They are the Black Dutch and the Black Irish and the melanated individuals of the North that came here from either Europe, Holland, or Southeast Africa.
Tell it two cities. That's why it's important to keep this stuff straight.
So
That's a very valid point.
right, so they're talking about Negroes. They're not talking about any of our family members that are Indians. Remember, the Trail of Tears had not happened yet. They just started. They were just starting to get that on the way.
Yep.
So see how confusing it gets when you keep like switching up the terms or these titles or these labels. Like it gets really confusing in terms of who is who. And these are two distinctly different people. Interesting.
So then it goes on to read, it says, of whom a large percentage came from the border slave states in Virginia and Kentucky. Immigrants came not only of their own accord, but in some instances, whole colonies were freed to settle in Ohio in 1819. In 1819, 420 settled in Brown County, and in a few years, over 1,000 were brought to Ohio. The most notable of these colonies was that composed of slaves of John Randolph, who were settled in Mercer and the adjoining counties. Let me move my cursor. Again, so this is the reason why this is so important. Notice the terminology. It says, the most notable of the colonies was the composed of the slaves or Slavs of John Randolph who were settled in Mercer and the adjoining counties. So think about it. You got Negroes they're talking about, and then you got people coming here who had Slavs or slaves. Then you got black Slavs or slaves. So who are they talking about when they say Slavs or slaves? So then it goes on to read, about this time, a movement which had long been agitated by noted individuals and by the General Assembly of Virginia took national form. This was an organization of the American Colonization Society in Washington, D.C. on December 28, 1816. This society proposed to deport to Africa or elsewhere with their consent free blacks of the United States. Stop right there. This organization was put together to send people where? To Africa. There's a key word that's missing. And I'm going to read it again. I'm going to see if you catch it. Society proposed to deport to Africa or elsewhere with their consent the free blacks of the United States. They didn't say back to Africa.
Nope.
And they also said or elsewhere. Where else could you possibly take these people that their origin is only Africa or comes from Africa, supposedly? You talking about us. Where is the elsewhere? I mean, their lies are so ridiculous. Come on now.
That's some other colonies. They used our ancestors to set up colonies in Africa. They used our ancestors to set up colonies in India. That's where them people went. Them couple 100,000 people that decided to go, that you never hear about now.
And this is in the National Archives. So I put the link in the chat. So please do the research. And if you find something that's contrary, please share it with us because I do not want this to be true. So in 1816, this society proposed to deport to Africa or elsewhere with their consent the free blacks of the United States. It offered a Negro policy designed to satisfy all. Here seemed to be a plan well adapted to Ohio where the free blacks were beginning to be alarmingly numerous. What? Alarmingly numerous?
Competition for resources.
And jobs.
What do you do when you can't compete? What do you do when you can't compete? They cheat.
Then it goes on to read, the citizens of Ohio were already divided into two hostile camps over the Negro, some favoring the existing legislation against him, and others crying for immediate and total emancipation. Why could not these discordant elements unite in one movement to deport the Negro to Africa? Not back to Africa, but to Africa.
Because I'm willing to bet that group that wanted full emancipation, they roots tied back to melanated Indians. Matisse. That's why they would fight for it. Because that's their cousins, or brothers and sisters. You got to remember the different groups.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, first. No, just saying, got to remember the different groups. Just the different groups at the time, how they broke people up.
And for those who are trying to fix the system, because remember, like, this is when politics is really getting popping. So they're trying to like really fix the system to suit them. So the whole sense of having a growing, quote unquote, poor population or Slav population, you're talking about numbers and voting. So if you are oppressing, you're stepping on people's head, and you see they already have a problem with even the Slavs. So that's more numbers for the people who feel disenfranchised within your system, which can easily get these people in power out of place. So that whole sense of making sure that, they're trying to get some of them out of here. So there wouldn't be a sense of voting them out. Because if you give people a common cause to band together and it's enough of them, that's an easy flip. They know this, of course. Remember, they have a head start on how to keep this going perpetually. That's why everybody's so compartmentalized. And the main point is to make sure that the Indian remains ignorant, because the Indian is the one that has the power, the influence, and even just the destiny to get things back on track.
And so let's put this in perspective also from a point of business. You have to remember, at this time, there is gold found. There are wars that need to be paid for. And there is still Indian land that can't be taxed. So if you're going to remove somebody, no, let me rephrase. If you're going to evict somebody, don't you need to replace them with somebody before you evict them? And the people that you are evicting are not taxpayers, but the people that you're bringing in, not only will they owe you for the trip here, but they will owe you on the taxes of the land that they work on, and also the taxes from their income. Now you see why it's important. Go ahead, Bones.
And to add another layer on it that makes it confusing, let's remember they split the Indian into three groups. Depending on how you look, the Indian can be reclassified as white, mulatto, or Negro. Now, a lot of these groups that was fighting against this starting to make a little bit more sense now.
Grand Rising Doodle Vision, he says, replace them with tax-paying citizens. You had to replace them with tax-paying citizens because they still owed Europe money. They still owe France money. France helped the 13 colonies defeat North France, aka Great Britain. But basically it was the Huguenots. So they owe France money on both sides. Who pays? And go ahead, Free.
That's not even considering they put themselves in the form of a vassal. While they keep talking about how free they are, why are you paying a vassalage over to Europe?
The one thing that
sounds like occupation to me.
You're right. And the one thing that we cannot continue to do is ignore the importance and the prominence of France. People are walking around here acting as if France did not exist or has no power, and that the Vatican holds all the power.
They better go look back at the map and see how far this French Empire stretched. The map shows you it covered most of America at this time, in the 1700s.
Hold on, Bones. Didn't at one particular time Napoleon Bonaparte didn't he remove the Pope?
Yep.
So let me ask you this. If Napoleon Bonaparte removed the Pope, how much power does the Vatican actually have if the Pope can be removed? If the Pope is the power, you can't remove the Pope. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Done. Stop falling for this boogeyman.
That's so true.
Doodle Vision says, and they still owe the Ottoman Empire. They owed a lot of people. This debt that the United States has is not new debt. It's old debt. And they've been finding ways to pay this debt using us since the beginning. So if you go back to look up New France, you'll see that New France was a large empire. If you go back and look up the Huguenots, you'll see how all this stuff ties in. That's the only reason why we was able to find this information. Any of it. So, let's get back to this. Where am I? It says, this suggestion had been considered by the Union Human Society, Claresville, in 1815, and it met with approval. The leading spirit in the society was Benjamin Lundy, who afterward conducted manumitted slaves to Haiti and sought to establish a colony of them in Mexico. And it was probably due to his influence that the proposal met with success at its inception. Life of Benjamin Lundy, page 16. But the citizens of St. Clairsville were not the only ones favorable of the deportation of the Negro. So, hold on. Benjamin Lundy had been sending Slavs to Haiti, and he sought to establish a colony of them in Mexico. Again, Slavs. He did not say black Slavs. He said Slavs. These are Europeans. These are your less melanated Europeans. Or the ones that could potentially be classified as white in some instances, just by looking at them.
Set up for a new caste system in a new area.
Just like they did when New France had 75% of the United States. And we were exposing the information about what went on in New Orleans, in Louisiana. That caste system exists everywhere. So let's continue.
Everywhere they are, that is. Which is virtually everywhere.
So for those of you who are trying to figure out where I'm reading from, I'm going to put this in the chat. It's basically a book that talks about the movement of the Negro out of Ohio. It says the people of Harrison, Delaware, Warren, and Hamilton counties sent petitions to the legislature in December 1817, praying that measures may be taken to effect the emancipation and colonization of people of color. Stop. We've heard that term, people of color, right?
Yes,
and it ain't talking about us.
Métis.
Now you notice. Yes. Now you notice that we have different people that they're talking about, and I'm only 2 pages into this book, and we've heard them talk about Negroes, slaves, and people of color.
What? No Africans? Oh man.
No, they're talking about deporting them to Africa, but they're not talking about Africans.
Any of them who were of Huguenot descent would have African descent as well, Southwest Africa.
Oak Cliff Tiff brought up a great point. She says color versus color.
Great point.
And then it goes on to read, their petitions received attention from the General Assembly, for in January 1818 a resolution was adopted advising Ohio congressmen to use their best efforts to procure the passage of a law in accordance with the desire of the memorialist. By this time, people in other parts of the state seem to have been aroused over this new scheme and were willing publicly to advocate it. Here's a key word. Were willing publicly to advocate it. So what were they doing privately? Again, you can. That's why reading for understanding or reading
is comprehension.
Reading for comprehension is one thing, but reading to dissect something is even better, because reading for comprehension sometimes can allow us to be indoctrinated because we miss certain things. That's just my personal opinion.
Lectio difficile, you're correct.
Exactly. Hold on. Who is it? Come on in.
We don't want it.
Really? It's not Avon calling. Doodle Vision says deporting them to establish a colony. That means they had no foundation or no foothold in Africa.
Mm-hmm. And that's what they use them for, to set up colonies on other land masses. Every place they sent these people, you'll notice, it was to a colony that they were setting up. They just didn't drop them off like in the middle of no place and these people just built something. No, they put them in colonies. They helped them get them started.
The same way England did the Huguenots.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, especially considering we know a lot of our ancestors got shipped away to other lands. And then, of course, they're shipping immigrants with an eye everywhere. It does make sense.
So it goes on to read, by this time, people in other parts of the state seem to have been aroused. Okay, it talks about them agreeing secretly. And were willing to publicly advocate it. For example, the grand jury of Ross County, after completing its regular work, resolved that we are the grand jury in Ross County, do hereby concur in the great and benevolent plan initiated by the American Colonization Society at Washington City for the purpose of colonizing the free people of color on the continent of Africa, and do recommend it to the patronage of the good people of this country. So I'm going to stop right there. We know who the Klan are, right? And we know who people proclaim to be white supremacists are, right? What's the one thing they're always chanting about people that are supposed to be Negroes? They always say, go back to Africa, right? Go back to Africa. Grand Rising, Trabab. Good to see you, brother. They're saying, go back to Africa. Go back to Africa. Because that's where they believe that they're from, right? If somebody tells you that they're from a place, or you think they're from a place and you don't think they belong here, you're going to tell them to do what? Go back to where you came from. Now, there have been at least 4 instances in this book. I've only read 2.5 pages of deporting people to Africa. Now we have a quote from a group of people who obviously have an issue with Negroes, right? And they're saying that Let me find it. We, the grand jury in Ross County, do hereby concur in the great and benevolent plan instituted by the American Colonization Society in Washington City for the purpose of colonizing the free people of color on the continent of Africa. Not once did they say going back or sending them back where they belong. They could have done that eloquently, couldn't they?
Easily.
So they are insinuating that these people aren't even from Africa and they want to send them there.
Dun.
Because they were Métis. If you look up free people of color, they're Métis. They have French parentage, usually on their father's side, and then indigenous parentage on their mother's side.
Exactly. So again, as Bones and Free and everybody else in the chat always eloquently speaks, where are these slaves that they're supposed to be sending back to Africa? Because we're deep in the 1800s now. We're deep into where slavery was supposed to have been legal, and there was Africans running around everywhere being whipped and chained and shackled and having masters and keeping them from running away and all this other good stuff. So where are all these slaves that they're talking about that need to go back to Africa?
No, to Africa.
No, I'm saying
to colonize.
Right. But I'm saying from the standpoint of the history that we were told, because they would
doesn't exist.
Right, they would be going back to Africa because that's where they came from, right?
Right.
So if you got all these melanated people that you can send to Africa, why don't you just send the ones back? Because they would be your most disgruntled. They would be the ones that's the most difficult to deal with. They would be the most angry.
You would think. You would think. Too much like right, TMH.
I'm just saying. To me, it doesn't make any sense because according to history, there are still shiploads of black people coming from Africa. But you're trying to send shiploads of people to Africa.
Mm.
Maybe
for colonization.
Yeah, maybe.
So that means, hold on, that makes the narrative that they give even worse. That means that they kidnapped some people on the shores of Africa, drug them across the Atlantic on this hell of a ride voyage, came to the Americas and made them build up the Americas. And then they're going to ship them, put them back on the boat, back to Africa to colonize over there?
When they could have just colonized them over there.
Not only that, but how are I don't care what people you descend from, how are you allowing that to happen? When is enough enough? Like, what is that?
So Do Division says establishing something implies it did not exist previously, i.e. established in 2019. That's facts.
That's how you know the story they gave you was bogus. You have to look at the details on what they tell you.
All right, everybody with a wrench, clear the blast zone. Clear the blast zone. Clear the blast zone.
I thought we said it was a ratchet.
Ratchet, range it, whatever. Clear the blast zone.
And by clearing the blast zone, that means get everybody out of the blast zone.
Everybody.
You say everyone with a wrench.
One more time. I was telling everybody with a ratchet to clear the blast zone. Meaning, anybody that ain't got a ratchet, help them clear the blast zone. Get them out the way. Direct them where to go.
Safety procedures.
Right. Evacuation procedures.
Right.
I told y'all I can't read and talk at the same time. Stop it.
Immediately.
It's all good. Everyone's safe.
So now we're starting to see how this plan is developing. They are trying to establish colonies in Africa that did not exist. Because another thing too, they didn't say establishing new colonies in Africa.
Right.
So based off of the wording, there were no colonies in Africa at this particular point in time. They're trying to establish a colony in Africa.
And distance-wise, Africa is so much closer, like to their motherlands and whatnot anyway. So at the end of the day, you can see all this is really just about commerce, because they come over here and set up colonies here, and all the produce comes from here for the most part. We have resources galore, and then it's easy just to ship it over to Africa, right up to Europe, through Asia, whatever. It's just like you just setting up your route.
Yeah, basically they were setting up American colonies over there in Africa. Ports.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, what is a colony really? A port.
Pretty much.
You setting up on the water, setting up shop to bring supplies in and out, and you're gonna make sure you're gonna build your structure there so you can protect it.
Mm-hmm. And Huguenots were known for living on the coast. They were coast dwellers, for the record.
Doodle Vision says quite a few Cherokee left by way of the ACS. This is how via Cherokee language is spoken in West Africa even to this day. Hold on.
Bye. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Who would perfectly know where to send them to Africa? The people that created the word Africa in the language, the Huguenots.
Right.
Oh, Cliff Tiff got it. French connection.
Indeed.
So now you got Cherokee over there in Africa. Now you see why this is so confusing. So let's continue reading. And they do recommend it to the patronage of the good people of this country. This was in March 1827, and 8 months afterwards, the Ohio State Colonization Society held its first annual meeting, and thus was launched an organized movement to deport the Negroes from the state. From the state, y'all. That was their goal. The Ohio State Colonization Society held its first annual... I got it. They held their first annual meeting in the hall of the House of Representatives in December 1827. So the government was aware of this. It was not the first organization in Ohio for promoting the cause of deportation as one existed as early as 1818. A number of other societies auxiliary to the parent society at Washington had been formed, but none possessed officers and managers of so much note. So this had been a plan all along. Grand Rising, Caribbean Bay. Good to see you, brother.
Peace, Carrie. Peace.
Glad you caught the cab this morning. So this had been a plan all along. They were looking to colonize Africa with Indians. Ain't that something?
Think about it. Wasn't they having a problem going over there? Fighting them different tribes in Africa?
Yep.
They needed somebody else to do their dirty work.
As always, they grabbed us. So remember, all this is going on at the same time. They're trying to remove Indians off their lands as well to move them west. So there are plots on top of plots. Well, we can't get them to go this way. We'll get them to go this way. If we can't get them to leave this way, we'll get them to leave this way. It just don't stop.
And that's how you get ancestors self-identifying as somebody else to try to avoid either being the options of having to leave your homeland, the options of having to pack up and go west and lose your land. Because by identifying, like you said earlier, by identifying as these Black Dutch or Black Irish, it allowed them to buy property. Remember, they was reallocating this land for Europeans to be able to buy or rent out.
And Doodle Vision said this is a result of the Ohio banking crisis in 1819. They sued the United States Bank. Yeah, that's right. All this stuff is happening during the time of the right before the no, this is in 1820. This is 100 years before the Great Depression. This is 1819. So this must have been a mini depression, another banking collapse. Okay. They sued the United States Bank. So, it says a number of other societies auxiliary to the parent society at Washington have been formed, but none possess offices and managers. So I already read that. All right. It says among the vice president were the Speaker of the Senate, Abraham Shepard, the president of Miami University, R.H. Bishop, and the president of the Ohio University, R.J. Wilson. Like other colonization societies, it was auxiliary to the American Colonization Society and was designed to head the movement in the states and to serve as a medium of communication between the parent society and the local societies. The second article of its constitution clearly sets forth the purpose of the society. The object to this attention shall be exclusively directed is the colonization of the coast of Africa with their own consent. And that's in parentheses. So first of all, they're looking for people who to volunteer to go. Number one. Number two, they're not sending people back to Africa. That's number two. Number three, they're looking to move the Negroes to colonize Africa. Ooh, Oak Cliff Tip says just like today. That's a fact. The Ghana movement, right? Want you to voluntarily go to Ghana. Right? Good point, Oak Cliff.
Now you add what James was talking about, the 1819 banking crisis on top. This is when France and Great Britain stopped warring with each other. 1815, they signed a peace treaty to where they're peaceful now. There's no longer a need for American goods overseas anymore. So now the soldiers come home, taking up jobs and stuff, but there's nobody to buy the products because there's no wars and nothing going on, no exporting going on like that. So what do? You come up with a scheme. We're going to create a new colony, so now we have a new export-import trade to keep the money moving.
You need new clients. You need new clients.
Especially when the U.S. government is selling land to immigrants on credit, but there's no products and nothing moving. So how are these bills getting paid?
Doodle Vision says, why wouldn't kidnapped slaves not want to go home, aka back to Africa? Yeah, we had brought that point up earlier, Doodle. I mean, if you've gotten all these slaves here, wouldn't they be glad to go back home? And since you're sending them to a place where you got them from, the coast, they would be extremely happy and thankful and be willing to do anything Master say do.
Why they people wasn't there waiting for them when they got dropped back off on the coast? I'm just saying, though.
Maybe they learned by then not to be around when you see a boat approaching shore. Based on that crazy narrative.
And you wouldn't need to add in a newspaper trying to convince Negroes to go set up establishments in Africa You wouldn't have to convince nobody. What you need, what you need, associations and societies to come up with schemes to get people to go back to Africa, to get people to go to Africa if that's your home. You wouldn't need no scheme. You're like, hey y'all, sorry for what we did, but we're gonna pay for the trip. Here.
That'd be a big welcome home party, right? Big celebration. Celebrations need resources. It says you can't use the same hustle on the same people, so you have to bring in new crop to continue the hustle. Then he says this sounds like some conscious community YouTube channels. Exactly. You burn them out, then you bring in new people, and then you hustle those new people. When those new people get tired, you burn them out, and then you hustle those new people. Same thing.
When you build the front door, they make sure it's a revolving one.
All right, so basically talks about sending these people back of their own consent, right? And then it goes on to read, of the free people of color of the United States, and such as many from time to time obtain their freedom, and the society will contribute its funds and efforts to that attainment of the object of aiding free colored persons of Ohio to emigrate to Africa, and by contributing its funds not thus appropriated to the treasury of the American Colonization Society. The selection of Africa as the destination of immigrants was common among the advocates of colonization, although other places had at times been mentioned. In 1824, a society had been organized in Cincinnati to investigate the feasibility of colonization in Haiti. But let me go back for a second. They are paying these people to go to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So, this brings up a very good point. If I'm from Africa, and you kidnap me from Africa, and then you're going to pay me to go back to Africa, why wouldn't I want to go? Because that would be like reparations, right? I mean,
first thing smoking.
So? Mm-hmm. Even if you say it without pay, I'm just gonna let you go home. If you've been in slavery, who's not taking that?
You just want to go home. Beating me and my people, chopping off foots, all this type of stuff you say.
Separating me from my children.
But you got to convince me to leave America now.
Come on.
Really? Every day I rise,
creeping in your room. Like none of this makes sense at all. And then not to mention all this talk of setting up or sending people to Haiti. And you're in Ohio doing it, which was like New France area, talking about a French colony. Okay.
Grand Rising, Arthur Grayboy, he says, I have to go back to the earlier videos to get caught up. Yeah, there's a lot that has happened and transpired if you haven't been following the show. We've been breaking down a lot of barriers. We've been exposed to a lot of information. So where you're at is we're in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. We went back and basically started from the Indians in the 14 and 1500s. So yeah, there's a lot to catch up on. If you go on the forum, watch the videos, go on the forum. The people in the forum will help you catch up. The people in the chat will help you catch up. There's some very educated and well-knowledge people in our chat. We have some great people, so hopefully that helps. At the end of the day, man, it doesn't make any sense the way this narrative is playing out, especially now that we know, one, who the culprits are, the French, and two, what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, now that you know, it's hard to trick anybody. Now that I know all the secrets of your magic tricks, they don't work anymore. Now you're just gonna get the side mouth and the side eye, the whole side. So let's continue to read. It says this colony was looking to pay people to be sent to Africa. Free people of color. Yeah. It says the selection of Africa was a destination. Oh, yeah. So now they was also talking about sending people to Haiti as well. Then it says at this time, Haiti offered the Negroes free passage, care on their arrival, and the richest unoccupied coffee and coffee lands. Cincinnati Daily Gazette, March 14th, 1862. Wow. So they're telling you what these people, what the goal was, and then they're giving you the newspaper article that confirms it. Proof is not a problem over here.
2020.
And this is on page 56 of 102, just so you know. So if you want to get a confirmation of that article, it's on page 56 of 102 in this article. It's the second paragraph. Cincinnati Daily Gazette. Go ahead.
Mr. TJ say clear the blast area. I got a racket.
All right, Mr. TJ, I'm going to clear the blast area. Here we go. Clear the blast zone. Clear the blast zone. Clear the blast zone. One time for your mind. 2 times for your soul. Grab them ratchets and don't let go. All right, that's it. Thank you, Mr. TJ. So the Daily Gazette it posted this. So this is a newspaper article that you can actually go look up, just to show you that this is legitimate apparently. So in 1835, Samuel J. Latta, an active member of the colonization movement, advocated Canada or Oregon. As late as 1848, a resolution was introduced in Ohio Senate seeking the passage, of a national law setting apart some of the territory acquired from Mexico for the blacks, allotting to each individual as many acres of land as might be reasonable. So they're doing to the blacks what they did to the Europeans over here. It's a
Putting
shell
them in
game.
debt, yeah.
It's a
Putting
shell
them in
game.
debt. Yep.
They're promising the blacks the same thing they promised the Europeans over here, to get them over here.
Clarify what you mean when you say black.
Thank you. The black Slavs, the black Irish, the black Dutch, the real ones. And now at this time, 1835, you got some Indians, specifically Cherokee, or those of the Cherokee Nation, also claiming to be black Irish and black Dutch, which make them black Slavs, which makes them black people, free of color, Negroes, whatever. Métis.
All this is about displacement. This is everybody coming together to displace the American Indian from their land by any means necessary.
And they're looking to do the same thing by sending people to Ghana today.
And again, why was Indians identifying as black Dutch and black Irish? Because of the Indian Removal Act.
Yep, they got
it. They were
initiated.
Identified to be your...
Go ahead, Bones.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, you good. They were identified to be what?
They were identifying to be that so they can keep their property and land, because they were removing the Indians at this time. It was a way to avoid having to move or to be disbanded from your relatives.
Grand Rising, Mike Easton. Hope all is well. So they're looking to displace these Métis, these Indians, these black Dutch and black Irish from Europe, Holland, and West Africa, to colonize in Africa. The same thing that they did to get the Europeans or the Slavs over here to displace us, they're going to do over in Africa. And it was proposed to do it in Haiti. And it was also proposed to do it in Canada and Oregon. Because remember, Oregon did not belong to the United States at this particular point in time.
Sound like the Oregon Trail to me.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that a French name?
Yes, it is.
Yes, Oregon is French. Man.
Mm-hmm.
And Doodle Vision says, those polka dancing Slavs known as Tejano music today. Well, there it is.
Dun-dun.
So they were looking to pay blacks to go over to other places and promising them land. So who do you think was going to teach them how to till this land?
When you say blacks, you have to always clarify, because the spell is for real, for real. The way that they've indoctrinated us, I just want to be clear.
Oh yeah, the blacks they were looking to send over there were the Métis, people of color, the mulattoes, the individuals who generally and typically had French fathers and Indian mothers, or Indians, or individuals that were Black Dutch and Black Irish.
Mm-hmm. Black Irish, correct.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure that was clear for anyone listening.
Most definitely. Always good looking out. So let's continue. So it says Africa, however, was the general choice. It was the home of the Negro. Oh, now they're putting this in there. The free black could carry civilization hither and could establish a barrier against slave trade. He would derive great benefit by settling in Africa, as well set forth by the president of Ohio State Colonization Society, December 19, 1827. Go ahead.
Hold on, I just felt insulted. So you telling me these same people that you kidnap as slaves, you're going to send back and they're going to stop you from kidnapping slaves? Man, these people don't... I just felt insulted on that one. And what?
Remember layers, bro. Because think about it. Some of the people that they are trying to send over there, their ancestors came from there. The Huguenots. French. So it's not too far off. Remember, it's not our ancestors that they're talking about sending over there. It's the Métis that they're sending back there, whose ancestors came from over there. Remember, French fathers. Founders of the Afrikaneers and the Afrikaneer language. So those are the people that they're talking about, if you think about it.
That's why I keep saying keep it straight, just so like it's easy for people to see exactly who's being spoken about, and then be able to compare and contrast the narrative that they gave us, which is a load of malarkey.
Right. They will always give us some truth. So the truth of the matter is those Afrikaneers that were originally French Huguenots that escaped prosecution from France to Africa to found the Afrikaneers and the African language, who then end up coming to the United States, or at that particular time, the Americas, and establishing relationships with indigenous people in Canada and in Central America, aka the Americas, 13 colonies, mixing with the women, having these Métis children. These Métis children would then go on to move into different areas of the said United States, end up in Ohio. Now they're trying to send these people, these Métis, who they consider black, back to Africa, because that's where their descendants, aka their fathers, are from.
And wasn't the Métis considered Aboriginal? Legally?
And the reason why, here's what ties it all up. The reason why it's voluntary is because they are who their mother is. You can't send them back. You can't deport them because, you can't make them go back to Africa because they are indigenous to America. That's why
that key.
It has to be voluntary. Because if it wasn't, exactly, because if it wasn't, they could just send them back like they send people back today. Hold on. Duda Vision says he wants me to look up something. He says, look up the dance of the Negrito in Mexico. It is a poorly orchestrated attempt to pay homage to Negritos indigenous to this land. So, can somebody look that up? So let's see. This is interesting. And this organization was considered a union, by the way. So, okay, what does it say? It says...
And Ohio, birthplace of these unions, too?
Yeah, Ohio is the birthplace of these unions, yeah. This says...
all these...
Go ahead, go ahead.
With all these soldiers coming back with no war to fight, looking for jobs, there's competition because you got Indians that got skill sets to the land.
It says the free black could carry civilization thither and could establish a barrier against slave trade. They would derive great benefit by settling in Africa, as well as set forth by President of Ohio State Colonization Society, December 19, 1827, when he said the blacks are an unfortunate race of men who do not, but in small degree, participate in privilege and immunities of the country, and who, from causes in their nature, inevitable and reasons insuperable, never can be admitted to the full enjoyment of those rights as fellow citizens. It is proposed to remove them to a territory which they can claim as their own, where they may enjoy under a constitution, the government adapted to their situation, all the rights and privileges which of right belong to a separate independent community. So this is the reason why we know they're not talking about our ancestors, because they make the statement that they are an unfortunate race of men who do not, but in some small degree, participate in the privilege and immunities of the country. Our ancestors were already sovereign, so they were immune from being taxed. So they can't be talking about our ancestors unless they voluntarily declared themselves as Black, Dutch, and Black Indians. Okay. And who, from causes in their nature inevitable and reasons insuperable, never can be admitted to their full enjoyment of those rights as fellow citizens. Indians weren't citizens, they were sovereign, unless they declared that they was going to be Black Irish and Black Indian. So it is proposed to remove them to a territory which they can claim as their own. So if they were talking about our ancestors, there was a territory that was already claimed as their own. And for those that actually moved, they already had a territory claimed as their own called a reservation. So who were they talking about? Those Métis that have been displaced, that became citizens, those Indians that declared to be Black Irish and Black Indians, and those Black Irish and Black Irish and Black Dutch, and those Black Irish and those Black Dutch that actually came from Europe, Holland, and South Africa. So then it says,
you hit it right on the head. Soldiers coming back from the wars with weapons, hollering about them Indians took all the jobs.
He said, sounds familiar. Same story all over and over again. Then it goes on to read, it says, no artificial barriers could be set up by whites in Africa to bar the development of people of color. Although we know that wasn't true. There they might enjoy social equity, educational privileges, and political liberty. Well, we know they weren't talking to our ancestors because our ancestors were already voting. They were already in politics. And they were already educated. The courts would be free to them, and justice would reign supreme. In truth, Africa was to be the promised land of these children of bondage. Who does that sound like they're preaching to? The Slavs looking to leave Europe because they were poor. It's the same story, just a different people in a different land.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever get a chance, go look at some of those videos where they're trying to entice you to go to Ghana and tell you how beautiful it is and how much inexpensive it is over there and how much further your dollar goes and how much land you can buy. Go check it out, and you'll see exactly the type of advertising they were doing to these individuals in the 1800s. It says the whites also would profit by the exodus of the colored population. The state would be relieved of an unfortunate class of people, vicious and degraded, deprived of every incentive to physical, moral, or intellectual improvement. It was pointed out that the Negroes contributed a large percentage of this prisons and jails and penitentiaries than any other class. They were transitory people without fixed habits or a permanent abode. We know they were talking about our people. We had permanent abodes.
Correct.
Moreover, the geographical situation of the state made her the refuge of redundant and superannuated slave population. These unhappy creatures, with all the ignorant and degraded habits of thinking and acting that pertain to slavery, were thrown into Ohio in yearly increasing multitudes to live here without either the qualifications or the privilege of citizens or of the freedmen. Thrown into. Think about this. They said they were thrown into. Means they were placed there. When did we ever hear of any slaves being placed in Ohio?
A quote unquote free state. You hear about them escaping to Ohio, but being placed in Ohio, unless you're talking about the from their narrative, the Pilgrims and Quakers, which are Huguenot descendants, being a part of helping Slavs.
And Doodle Vision says, volunteer to move to Mexico. Volunteers, Métis, a.k.a. black slaves, a.k.a. Melunges, from Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, started migrating to the Mexico, Texas, thus spawning the Texas-Mexican War. Boom. There you go. But let me see something right quick. Do you think that there was a fair in Ohio in the early 1800s? Think about it. Because these people are upset that there's a large influx of Slavs in their area, or Métis, or colors, or blacks. Could there have been a fair at this time? Let's look.
Thomas, could you explain the significance of the fair while you search?
Okay.
What was the year again?
Early 1800s. So what we come across, this is the reason why we end up coming across the well, not me, but Bones, Freed, James, and Copper, and also No Sellout, was that there was some videos that we watched about the fairs. They talk about all these old buildings, but there were these people there that looked like they were being indocked or they were being processed, and they had passports. So what we were looking at was, who were these people? So come to find out that these people were Huguenots, and that's what led us on this journey to Huguenots. So that's where these fairs are coming up in. They're using these fairs to bring in people, but also destroy some of the older buildings that had been up way before the colonizers got here. Am I close, or did I say anything that was wrong or inaccurate, y'all?
Nope. Nail on the head.
So I'm seeing a history of the Great Gouge County Fair. Hold on. Nah, that's not the one I'm talking about. Give me a few more minutes. Let's see what we got.
Trying to find out this year's World Fair is in Dayton, Ohio.
Say again.
This year's World Fair is in Dayton, Ohio.
Really?
No such thing as coincidence.
Okay, it says list of world fairs. It's Wikipedia. Let's do this. These world fairs do not. Let's see. 1800s. Come on. Because we know some fairs were happening simultaneously.
Right. I start looking too for it, and I know from the last time I was digging on these world fairs, they completely switched up.
Yeah, they're not.
Apparently, we hit on something. They completely switched this up in terms of like how they had everything listed. Just made it more difficult to find. It's all good though. We're resilient.
So the reason why we're looking for these fairs is because these fairs were used for importation. Really, my keyboard is not dusty. Yeah, it's not letting me find it, but we'll do some research because these world fairs were used to bring in large masses of people from all over the world.
Closest one I found so far, Philadelphia, 1876.
1876. Yeah, it's been buried. Okay, we'll find it. We always do. So the reason why I'm saying it is because there's a complaint about all these Negroes being basically dumped in Ohio, and they say it's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be happening because there was a large exodus of Virginia slaves leaving. El Boris is like the St. Louis Fair. Exactly, these fairs were massive, and they were basically a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and then after that they would destroy the building.
3 to 6 months. They lasted 3 to 6 months at a time.
Okay, see, I stand corrected. So, yeah. So where are we at now?
In the early 1800s, the World Fairs were held in France, 1801, 1802, and 1806.
Yeah.
1819 as well, 1823, 1827, all France.
Yeah. So I would think that those World Fairs is where those people were actually leaving and they were coming here. We would do some research to find that out, because that will tie in a lot as to how all these people were being imported over here and under what title, if you will. It goes on to talk about, says, these unhappy creatures with all the ignorant and degraded habits of thinking and acting that pertain to slavery were thrown into Ohio in yearly increasing multitudes to live here without either the qualifications or privileges of citizens or of freed men. If the state of affairs continued for a few years, the black population would, by immigration and natural increase, so unequal that the whites, and then, as one writer expressed, when hundreds have flooded to Ohio as the asylum of freedom, who will desire her pleasant plains and valleys as residence. Furthermore, in the fearful event of a civil, I guess they're trying to say civil war, it would not be in a slaveholding state or among slaves that those schemes of blood and ruin would be laid and ripened into maturity. But here, where the Negro enjoyed enough freedom to feel his chains, would be encouraged to break them off without the watchful restraints of a master. Thus it behoved Ohio to preserve the purity of her morals and the safety and perpetuity of her political institutions. So, there you go. They didn't want these influx of people coming in here. Alright. James sent me something. Click on it. Thank you, Sir James.
Hard hats on for this one. Double strapped. Make sure them seat belts are very firmly tight. It's gonna go down.
All right.
You have been warned.
Y'all are funny. That's right, Ladarian. We can gear up. Okay, so it says Irish and German immigration. In the middle half of the 19th century, more than one half of the population of Ireland immigrated to the United States. Wait, what?
You've been warned. It gets deeper.
Hold on. Hold on.
Yes, it did. Yeah, that's what it said.
More than one half of the population of Ireland immigrated to the United States. So did an equal number of Germans. Most of them because of civil unrest, unemployment, or almost inconceivable hardships at home. This wave of immigration affected almost every city and almost every person in America. Stop.
There's been a request.
Say it again, Free.
There's been a request for you to repeat that, please.
Yes, I'm going to repeat.
And he ain't get to the deep part yet either.
It says, in the middle half of the 19th century, more than one half of the population of Ireland immigrated to the United States. So did an equal number of Germans. Most of them came because of civil unrest, severe unemployment, or almost inconceivable hardships at home. This wave of immigrations affected almost every city and almost every person in America from 1820 to 1870. over 7.5 million immigrants came to the United States.
What's that number again? One
Wow.
more time. What's that number? One more time. Hold on to them helmets, y'all. How many?
Over 7.5 million immigrants came to the United States. These are your slaves. Ladies and gentlemen, we have found the slaves.
No, go further. Go further. Read further. Oh, that ain't nothing. Read further. Ooh.
Okay. From 1820 to 1870, over 7.5 million immigrants came to the United States, more than the entire population of the country in 1810. What the blood clot?
It gets deep. Hold on, relatives. Hold
on. You had more people coming into the United States than you had all of the population of the United States by 1810?
Wow. Talk about a culture shock.
More than
everybody okay? Is everybody okay? Chat, y'all okay out there? Listeners, y'all okay?
Stop.
Let's make the show.
All right.
Everybody all right?
Man, look. Everybody with a ratchet, escort people away from blast area, please. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more again. 7.5 million immigrants.
So you have a request to read it one more time? Read the article one more time. We're to the point.
I'm going to put the link in the chat.
More than the population of the entire United States at the time.
Okay, here we go.
Wow.
But it gets deeper, Free. That ain't nothing.
In the middle half of the 19th century, more than one half of the population of Ireland immigrated to the United States. So did an equal number of Germans. Most of them came because of civil unrest, severe unemployment, or almost unconceivable hardships at home. This wave of immigration affected almost every city and almost every person in America. From 1820 to 1870, over 7.5 million immigrants came to the United States, more than the entire population of the country in 1810. Nearly all of them came from the northern and western Europe. Slavs, about a third from Ireland and almost a third from Germany. Slavs. Burgeoning companies were able to absorb all that wanted to work. Immigrants built canals and constructed railroads. They became involved in almost every labor-intense endeavor in the country. Much of the country was built on their backs. What?
ADOS. That's who they're talking about.
Oh man, y'all wonder why these politicians be running away from interviews and saying no. They ain't racist. They just know better. They know who to run.
Everybody still okay out there? Cause that's just the icebreaker.
Hold on, I gotta read that again because that's some bull.
I told you it was a deep one.
Again, everything that we thought we knew, we don't. More than the entire population of the country in 1810, nearly all of them came from the northern Western Europe. Slavs. About a third from Ireland, almost a third from Germany. Slavs. Burgeoning companies were able to absorb all that wanted to work. So that means there was enough business, think about it, in the north to absorb 7.5 million people. Immigrants built the canals and constructed railroads. They became involved in almost every labor-intense endeavor in the country. Much of the country was built on their backs. And then there's a letter that supports that. Proof is not a problem here. It says, I am exceedingly well pleased at coming to this land of plenty. On arrival, I purchased 120 acres of land at $5 an acre. You must bear in mind that I have purchased the land out, and it is to me and mine an estate forever, without a landlord, an agent, or tax gatherer to trouble me. I would advise all my friends to quit Ireland. The country most dear to me. As long as they remain in it, they will be in bondage and misery. What you labor for is sweetened by contentment and happiness. There is no failure in the potato crop, and you can grow every crop you wish without manuring the land during the life. You need not mind feeding pigs, but let them into the woods, and they will feed themselves until you want to make bacon of them. I shudder when I think that starvation prevails to such an extent in poor Ireland. After supplying the entire population of America, there would still be as much corn and provisions left us would supply the world, for there is no limit to cultivation or end to land. Here, the meanest laborer has beef and mutton, with bread, bacon, tea, coffee, sugar, and even pies, the whole year round. Every day here is as good as Christmas Day in Ireland.
Stop for 1 second. Now these pigs that we know carry bacteria and germs that spread to people were let loose into the wild, running around where our ancestors lived. Is that how these viruses spread? Just a thought.
It's kind of like when your child goes to public school. How many times have little ones come home sick after the first or second day because they're just not used to being around people other than the people in their family or the people that they play with?
Yeah, you let these pigs out here into the woods, coming in close contact with Indians, passing bacteria and germs back and forth.
Grand Rising Indigenous American Leo. Good to see you. Wow. Judah Vision says
I know, Mr. TJ.
This was your union. Slavs, aka Matisse, aka Cajuns, aka wooden shoe wearing. Dutch. $5 an acre.
Yellow. $5 an acre.
Your $5 Indians.
It makes me mad when I think about that Subway song now.
Oh, please don't anger me that way. It does put a whole nother meaning on it.
Mm-hmm. Right in front of your face like, bow, take that.
Original one says, I talked to a Latino. He told me he was Mexican. Then later in the conversation, he said his people came from Ireland through Canada just to get work in the United States, and they snuck in. Okay.
That was definitely the route.
My
One
bad.
of the many, but the main route. That route through Canada,
Mm-hmm.
down to Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. So, let's continue to read. In Ireland, almost half of the population lived on farms that produced little income because of their poverty. Most Irish people depended on potatoes for food. When this crop failed 3 years in a succession, it led to the Great Famine with horrendous consequences. Over 750,000 people starved to death. Over 2 million Irish eventually moved to the United States, seeking relief from the desolated country. Impoverished, the Irish could not buy property. Instead, they congregated in cities where they landed, almost all in the northeastern United States. Today, Ireland has just half the population it did in the early 1840s. There are now more Irish Americans than there are Irish nationals.
Woo! Can't get no more realer.
There's those numbers again. That is insane.
That explains the Irish police officer's relationship with quote unquote black man. Anyway. In the decade from 1845 to 1855, more than 1 million Germans fled the United States to escape economic hardship. They also sought to escape the political unrest caused by riots, rebellion, and eventually a revolution in 1880 and 1848. The Germans had little choice. Few other places besides the United States allowed German immigration. Unlike the Irish, many Germans had enough money to journey to the Midwest in search of farmland and work. The largest settlements of Germans were in New York City, Baltimore, Cincinnati, St. Louis, and Milwaukee. Who are the Germans? Your Huguenots. Superfly's chick says, funny you said that. I know a man from Africa that said they always sneak in from Canada. When they kicked out of the U.S., they just pay someone in Canada to look the other way. Doodoo said the Choctaw sent potatoes to Ireland prior to the hostile takeover. Dutch Huguenots, exactly. These Germans are the Dutch and the Huguenots. These are the ones that have money. These are your aristocrats. These are the ones out there whose descendants are actually getting flooded out there right now, being in the Midwest.
Yep.
Patrick Gabriel says, not only I needed a helmet, I needed a jaw strap. Oh boy. This is crazy. With vast numbers of German and Irish coming to America, hostility to them erupted. Part of the reason for the opposition was religious. All of the Irish and many of the Germans were Roman Catholic. Part of the opposition was political. Most immigrants living in the cities became Democrats because the party focused on the needs of commoners. Party of the opposition occurred because Americans in low-paying jobs were threatened and sometimes replaced by groups willing to work for almost nothing in order to survive. Signs that the Nina no Irish need apply sprang up throughout the country.
But there's more.
Man, ethnic and anti-Catholic rioting occurred in many northern cities. The largest occurring in Philadelphia in 1844 during a period of economic depression. Protestants, Catholics, and local militia fought in the streets. Stop. Who are the Protestants?
Huguenots.
Who are the Catholics? The other French.
The other French. Northern French versus South French. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's French against French.
They fighting on our land, peoples. And a local militia, right? In the streets, 16 were killed, dozens were injured, and over 40 buildings were demolished. 40 buildings? Come on, man.
Why are they demolishing buildings?
Because that's what they do. They
blamed it on us.
They demolish stuff when they're excited. Let a team win a championship and see what they do in the streets.
That is true.
You never see a soccer match?
I retract my question.
How they get down, man? They team losing a soccer match, burn the whole city down. What?
Doodle Vision says I'm patting myself on the back right now. Man, you need to come in here and get several rounds of standing ovations. Anyway, Doodle Vision, James Flames, aka Choctaw Jimmy. Stop playing. The most influential of these parties, the Know Nothings. Oh my gosh.
I told you, it gets deeper. It gets deeper.
The Know Nothing was anti-Catholic and wanted to extend the amount of time it took immigrants to become citizens and voters. They also wanted to prevent foreign-born people from ever holding public office. Economic recovery. Hold on.
America is a what nation now again?
Oh, wow.
Just saying. I'm sorry about that, TMH. Had to throw that in real quick.
Nah, bro, you good. Y'all remember the Know Nothing Party? Y'all remember that bill that they did on the Know Nothing Party, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the Know Nothing Party was an anti-Catholic and wanted to extend the amount of time it took immigrants to become citizens and voters. They also wanted to prevent foreign-born people from ever holding public office. Economic recovery after the 1844 Depression reduced the number of serious confrontations for a time as the country seemed to be able to use all the labor it could get. But nativism returned in the 1850s with a vengeance. In the 1854 election, nativists won control of state governments in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and California. They won elections in Maryland and Kentucky and took 45% of the vote in 5 other states. In 1856, Millard Fillmore was the American Party candidate for president and trumpeted anti-immigration theme. Who does that sound like? Nativists caused much splintering in the political landscape, and the Republicans, with no platform or policies about it, benefited and rode to victory in the divisive election in 1860. Alright. Everybody with a ratchet, start escorting people to the nearest safe spot. Clear the blast zone. Clear the blast zone. Clear that cotton picking blast zone. Wrong button.
Double check to make sure everything was safe. That's all good.
You said cotton picking. I was like, whoa.
Stop it. Told y'all, I know I can't read and talk at the same time.
Oh, man.
And Boris says, fighting over something that don't even belong to them. Well, yeah, we kind of handed them the keys to the Ferrari. Okay. What do you say to this? Doodle Vision says, Matisse declared natives, I'm a real American. Fight for the right of every man. We're going to have to continue this into next week. Matisse equaled Native Americans.
Those are the ones we know are Native Americans today.
Yep.
Yes, Matisse would be your Native Americans.
That's why there's a split. That's why they call themselves Native Americans and not American Indians, because they know better.
Mm-hmm.
They're distinct. Remember, they're distinct because they bred amongst themselves for so long. That's why they don't look like nobody else, the majority of them. Just remember their history.
Boris says, I'm in Connecticut. Okay, so what do you need me to repeat, Pamela? Last thing I said was in reference to your Native Americans are your Matisse. Dude Vision says your inbred hillbillies. The Dutch, the Melungeons, the Afrancha, the people of color. These are your American Indians. They are not your Native. They are your Native Americans. I'm sorry. They are your Native Americans. The Matisse, the Dutch, the Melungeons, the people of color. They are your American Indians. They are not your American Indians. They are your Native Americans. I'm getting all confused. The Native Americans.
They would be Native Americans because they were born born in America.
Right. They are not your American Indians. Those will be our ancestors. They are the American Indians are not your pure blood Indians. That's why they're 1/4, 1/8, 1/16.
Yeah, when it comes to the natives, yeah.
Because their fathers are not from here. Whereas our fathers are. That's the main difference.
And that's your Native American, Matisse, having a European father and an Aboriginal mother.
And we have an Aboriginal father and an Aboriginal mother. That's what separates an American Indian from a Native American. Now you understand the difference. And that explains why they don't want us in there. That explains why some of them don't want us in their tribes. Because we're not. If you think about it, the way they break it down, they say you're not 1/4 or one. You have to be 1/4 or 1/16, whatever their tribe is. What they're telling you is you have to be Métis.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pure blood. We're pure blood. We're not Métis. We may have such a small mixture of Métis that is bred out.
And that's why we also say, yelling, screaming about telling people to go home. Who are you talking to? When some of these people are of this land. Their fathers are foreign, but their mothers are not.
So let's put this in this proper perspective. The Native Americans and the American Indians, 6th-generation grandmothers are sisters.
Bingo.
That's well said.
So if their 6th-generation grandmothers are sisters, who's going home? Who you sending home?
Because that ain't nothing but your cousin, whether you like it or not.
It don't sound like your favorite cousin, though. Trying to get him out of here. Get out of here. What you talking about?
So that gives a whole new meaning to pick your friends because you can't pick your family.
Oh, it does.
So technically speaking, if you trace so this is really gonna make some people upset. So get ready. Hold on. Double buckle, triple buckle your chin straps. That means if you find Indian in your family, you are also related to almost all of the politicians and all of the presidents.
Awooga, dive, awooga.
I'm gonna go on mute so I can cry. Excuse me.
Because if our 6th-generation grandmothers are sisters, what does that make us? Distant cousins. So does that mean you're European? No, that does not mean you're European. That means you got distant cousins that are European. That means you got distant cousins that are Slavs. That means you got distant cousins that are fill in the blank with anybody that's not pure blood.
Sound about right.
So the question again is, who are you sending home? Darian Wood says, nah, man.
Oh, Ladarian. I feel your pain, sir.
Trust me.
Somebody on that
Be in agony about it.
Mr. TJ says, let me hold 100. Just like a cousin. Just like a cousin.
You ain't lying. Hold on. Let me just... I got my proof right here.
Original one says, I seen the video of Native Americans protesting, cursing the police. The police said, go back to Germany.
Whoa.
Doodle Vision said, these Native Americans came from us. We didn't come from them. Facts.
Excellent point. Thank you for stating that. Excellent point.
Copper Color Queen says,
Yeah.
I just found out my dad's is listed as mulatto on the 1880 census and changed to black in the 1900s. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds about right. So, I mean,
There's strong possibility as to why now.
Yeah.
After this research. So,
I mean,
again, I appreciate everybody who comes along the journey with us. Because it makes sense in terms of like the collective build and when everybody can add their piece to the puzzle. It just allows us to get to the big picture even faster. So, thank you all for all of your participation. Real talk.
So now you understand why it is so important to know who you are and know who your ancestors are. Because at the end of the day, the American Indians know who their ancestors are. They know who they are tied into.
Mm-hmm.
You can't send them nowhere.
Yeah, the Native Americans, yeah, they know.
And the majority of their close cousins are politicians that sit in office. They're the ones that's voting. They're the ones that's gathering up their groups so they can do what they do to control and maintain their families and stuff.
Look at it this way. These 5 civilized tribes that everybody talk about, that a lot of people think those only ones exist. Y'all do know they Matisse, right? Well, if you didn't know, 5 civilized tribes are Matisse. Don't take our word for it. The eye test will always lead you wrong. The eye test will always lead you wrong. What they told you, believe nothing you see.
Half of what you hear.
Doodoo Vision says, I would join the panel, but too busy moonwalking all over the house. I
was trying to hold it in. That's why I laughed earlier. It was like a serious moment, but I read his comment and I couldn't hold it in. Oh, thanks, James.
No, not all the members in the 5 civilized tribes are $5. Listen to what we're saying. They're Matisse. A lot of them are descendants of the ancestors of Europeans and Aboriginal women. A lot of them stayed to themselves and interbreeded for so long they distinctly look different. This is on file and on record. In Canada, they're considered Aboriginals. Since, what, 1982?
Mm-hmm.
She said I was speaking on some of my folks. My bad. No worries. We just want to clear up stuff because people can read stuff out of context on Cliff Tiff. It's all good. We got you. So, y'all. I know y'all understand what just happened here today, right? Y'all do understand what just happened here today. We have uncovered another group of people. Now you understand who the Native American is. They are the Matisse. The Native Americans are the Matisse.
In Spanish, what you call them?
Mestizo. You'll be your mestizo. Or the mestizo.
Well, mulatto.
Mr. TJ, so in actuality, you ain't Batista or mulatto if daddy not white. By that definition, Mr. TJ, yeah. And it's not just...
the mother...
Go ahead.
Yeah, because your mother would have to be of this land. Because how else would you be able to claim as being an Aboriginal or having ties to the land? So yes, the mother would have to be Aboriginal, and the father would have to be a European.
Yeah, mestizos are your what they call half Negroes. Or half breeds. Remember, they was calling them half breeds as well. So,
but that would be like the basically like the first generation, more or less, because depending on how they choose to marry going forward, it wouldn't necessarily be half.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the majority of their ancestors, according to them, you can talk to them. They go 1/16, 1/8, 1/4 Cherokee, or 1/4
Right.
whatever. So that means they're mixed down. Their blood is mixed down. Doodle Vision says you can be Indian and be mulatto if you have your Bible and your church shoes.
At the same time.
Lady J says mystic métis hybrids is what I call them. Yeah, and we can also call them family or relatives. So be nice to your cousins.
Ow.
Go ahead, Bones. Go ahead, do the vision. And say it. Thanks, Issa. I know. Go to Moon says, hold my mule. So everybody needs to go to the nearest exit so you can start removing your hard hats and all your other safety gear and turn them into the people with the ratchets. So y'all can get issued some new ones Monday rising. Yeah, like Dude Vision says, remember, some Indians were claiming to be Black Dutch and Black Irish. You can't forget about them.
He also said, thanks, Issa.
Yeah, I saw that. I wasn't going to read that. Thanks, Free.
I got you, Dude.
Manny M. French says, what a great first class gratitude for the enlightenment. Manny, this is what we try to do every day. There's a lot of great information that the chat has been responsible for helping us bring forward. So this is a team effort. The great thing about this chat and this forum is that we are all learning and growing together. We just trying to add these pieces together, trying to uncover what's been covered, and helping everybody out. The Darian Wood says, nah, man, we not going to answer the door like they Jehovah Witness. Really? Dude's Vision says, shout out to Bones and them. Go to Moon says, no, we got to wait till Monday. James.
So the Moon has some homework. Be happy you have to wait till Monday, sir.
That's right. You got a couple of days to do your homework.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you again.
And Antonio Batista says, so who gonna write the book for the curriculum? We gonna do this as a unit. That's why we got the forum. This is going to be a group compilation. No one person can write this book. This is all all of us situation. Lottie Dottie. Not everybody, but you know what I mean.
The same way we build.
That's right. Antonio says, I need a first edition. So that means you need to help write the first edition, right?
Boom.
So we didn't do everything, and when I say we have to talk about the panel, didn't do everything by ourselves to get to this point. We had y'all help and y'all participation. So in order to put that curriculum out, we gonna need y'all help. I'm just saying, we are a team. But Darren, what's this? How do we help? By doing the research like we all do, and contribute to the forum and put that information in there. And the great thing about anything that you put in the forum, as long as you log in, it's attached to your name. So you will always get credit for everything.
Yeah, when anything get posted, you get an update sent to your email or notification. Like I said, it's a way for us to keep these conversations and the builds going on when we're not online. Just because we're not online, it does not mean we can't be doing research as a group. We'll get more done that way.
Exactly. And then it's on our own platform. So therefore, if something happens with Google or YouTube and they change their policies, it will not affect our forum. So something to think about.
For our research.
Exactly. It won't all of a sudden disappear. I hope UB News got all this stuff back. Speaking of which. So, okay, great people. No sellout. Someone's asking about the blood type diet series. You care to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
That's
Oak Cliff. What you talking about, Oak Cliff?
Oak Cliff
on that health and wellness section.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, I got that. Let me get that popping. There's gonna be a bunch of stuff in there. Nothing too specific on one thing, but yeah, the blood type stuff. I'll put that information in there.
Okay.
If y'all were listening during that when we were reading, just remember what I was saying about moderation and picking and choosing. Don't just be eating stuff just because the book says so. But I digress. Back to you, Tommy.
Thanks. So,
and all those who are interested in helping or putting whatever information they got forward, like you said, just come over to the website, register to the forum. There's a global chat there so we can keep the conversations going on and find out how we can help each other.
Exactly. And with that, I think we have all the hard hats turned in. And everybody can go on with their day. So before we let you out of here, we're going to, everybody get their citations. So before we leave, ladies first. Free. What you got for us?
Thank you, TMH. Make your next move your best move. Definitely do your genealogy. Remember who you are. Take this information and do something with it in terms of allowing yourself to grow. All living things grow. So don't stay in a stagnant mindset or disposition. Learn to be adjustable so that you can reach your full potential. Much love to you all, and until next time.
Thank you, Free. Appreciate you as always. No sellout. What you got for us, brother?
Nothing. So we got forum for all y'all sad people out there that's mad that we're getting off the air. We got a forum to keep the conversation going. Links in the chat. Emails in the chat if you got questions, comments, concerns, and or corrections. And yeah, y'all have a grand weekend, marvelous weekend. Even if it's raining, do something.
David Corey was asking about what book for blood types.
Do what now?
David Corey was saying, no sellout, what book for blood types?
I can post that. I just deleted that out of my clipboard. I'm gonna post it.
Okay.
Link,
anything, post it in the forum so everybody can get it who interested.
Yeah, that's definitely going in the forum since we did this series on. I'm gonna post all the books that I was gonna do also. But I'll post that one right now in the chat. Dude is stupid. Hold on, let me I'll post it in the chat. But yeah, that's all I had to say. Peace, y'all. I'm gonna say it again.
He can't help it.
I know, right? So for me, always appreciation to the chat. Y'all are the bomb chat. Y'all make what we do worth it. To see y'all, growing and being able to share information with us to make us think and make sure that we're on point. Y'all hold us accountable. That's the thing that we appreciate about y'all. Y'all don't just take what we say and just echo it. Y'all do the research and y'all ask questions that make us go back and reevaluate and make sure that when we bring you information, we can validate it and we can prove it. So we definitely appreciate you for that. I want to say thank you to the new subscribers. Thank you mostly to the individuals that are listening and just sitting back and just seeing how things are going. We know that you hear us. Just because we can't see you don't mean you are no less important. Again, we're here to help. We're here to expose information that will help. The only time that we will talk about something outside of our scope, if we're asked about it, and then we will do the research and give you the pros and the cons of what we discovered. We're not here to get in your personal business to tell you what you are here for or what you're not here for, who you should be attached to and who you should be attached to. Like everybody, we do have ethics, and at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that we stay on code. And one of the things we do to stay on code is we don't associate with scammers. So, it is what it is. You got to draw the line somewhere. And as long as you don't be dealing with scammers, we could do business. Because one thing I don't want to do is we cannot afford to expose our relatives to the same tomfoolery that our ancestors did and end up in the same place or worse. The individuals that hemmed us up as Indians were Indians. Please do not forget that. So just because somebody looks like you and sounds like you, don't mean they have your best interests at heart. And if they are a known scammer, they have already proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that they don't have your best interests at heart. So, as Free would say, macro. If they're willing to scam over a couple of $100, don't you think they'll scam over a couple of $100 million? Everybody must prove themselves. I don't care how large their YouTube group is or how many followers. And here's something I wanted to make y'all think about. For those of you who are not really familiar with unions and the way that they work, the whole premise of a union is, regardless of how well-intentioned you are or how good of a job you do, you are getting paid and you are getting a raise based off of your tenure, meaning how long you've been in that position. It has nothing whatsoever to do with your skill set. I was a president of a union for 3.5 years for the United States Postal Service, so I know what I'm talking about. Unions do nothing to promote the benefit of the people at this particular point in time. It's all about seniority and how long you've been somewhere. You get promoted and you get the money based off of how long you've been doing something. Doesn't that sound like some of these YouTube channels? They've been here for a long time. They've been here doing stuff for a long time. And just because they've been here for a long time, they think they should be given certain privileges and certain rights. That is a union Slav mindset. So everybody should be tested, regardless of what your tenure is. Keep that in mind. And with that, I'll relinquish the mic to Bones.
Yeah, another explosive show. I'd like to thank everybody on the panel for putting in their time and their effort to make the show what it is. I'd like to thank the chat for showing up every rising, for making this possible. And on that note, until we meet for the next Rising show, everybody have a very, very blissful day. And peace.
Peace, y'all.
Peace out.